Buddy, you want to do this video? Here, do the video. Say, hi, I'm Kazoo. I'm going to talk to you about the low oil prices. But first, check out my butt. Anyway, okay, so oil prices in Alberta are, well, oil prices in the country, I guess, is affecting Alberta's production. It's affecting the U.S. Shale. The Saudis have come out and said, and they said it at one point, they'll take the oil as low as they want. And I guess they're saying the equivalent of the Saudi Arabian Warren Buffett, I guess you would say, is out there saying $100 barrel oil, never going to happen again. Said it was artificial and it didn't need to be that way. Now, Obama has been out there saying, yeah, we're with the Saudis and we've manipulated the oil. You know, they're pumping out oil left, right, center, you know, no stop in sight. And they also came out and said, well, if you think we're doing this to destabilize Russia, oh, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing this to destabilize Iran either. No, not at all. It just happened that way. Yeah. And there's a lot of agendas on this. Now, one of the agenda, it is a bit of an economic Kickstarter to a point, but, you know, if the ship is sinking on one end and you run to the other end of the ship, eventually, yeah, you might be buying a little time. I don't think you're going to save anything. Now, the shale industry, they have to cut back on, and there's layoffs there in the States and stuff like that. In the oil patch in Alberta, it's kind of, I don't know how many layoffs there is, but again, if oil goes below, I think they said 30 a barrel on the CBC, you know, they just can't recoup that. So what happens when oil goes below 30 a barrel? Well, that means all the transfer payments that are going to, you know, they're talking about a recession in Alberta. Think about it. That's our strongest economy in the country is Alberta. Okay? Now, they're talking about Alberta going into recession. And it's going into recession before any of the other provinces. But think about this. Alberta, yeah, under Alison Redford, it started to rack up some debt because of her, you know, she was a left-wingy, you know, what were these so-called progressive conservatives? You know, they're really a liberal. You know, they're really liberals. They're not conservative. You know, fiscal. You know, you can have social programs and be fiscally responsible, but you have to be fiscally responsible first to be considered a conservative. She didn't do that. Like this idea of borrowing money from the government to rack up debt. Eventually, you know, you end up like Greece or Spain. And Quebec and Ontario is kind of like the Greece and Spain of Canada. You know, economically speaking. Ontario, you know. Ontario is just, there's just too much government there. That's the problem. You got a dog. Okay. And the bottom line is that if Alberta goes into recession, every other, and transfer payments, you know, because the way the transfer payments work in Canada is the have-not provinces get from the have provinces. But if they go into recession, then they're going to be starting to become a have-not province. Therefore, you know, it's going to get very tough in this country for some people. Particular retirement, healthcare. Those are the things that always get cut first for some reason, not the big government pensions and, you know, just the wasteful spending or the foreign aid. Again, you know, before we cut our, you know, transfer of wealth here, let's cut the foreign aid spending. We're way too involved in global affairs. We're way too involved in that. We don't need to know what's going on over there so much. But, I mean, that's the only time you hear about our prime minister and stuff like that is when there's something to do with over there. But, you know, it's like, no, focus on here. And the problem is all these politicians want to run the UN someday. That's the biggest problem right there. Which, considering the global governance thing, it makes understandable sense. That, you know, they want to be running the main, you know, the world, so to speak. So with that going, oil dropping down the way it is, there's also been speculation when it bounces back that, you know, because of everything will be in such recession, there, you know, like the consumer's winning out right now for now, but, you know, once they have to stop, you know, well, once you lay off everybody and they go home, nobody's pumping oil in Canada, nobody will be pumping oil in the United States, they will not be energy independent. Therefore, Saudi Arabia, even if it has $10 a barrel oil, which some said they might take it, they'll take it down to whatever they want. They could take it down to $1 a barrel if they want. They don't care, you know. You know, because this isn't done. Again, they're pumping all this oil when it's not needed, you know. So, to me, the only thing that suggests is that they're getting ready for war. So they're pumping all the oil you need now. So during the war, you know, because refineries are going to be hit. But what war are we talking about? Are we talking about World War III or just the war against ISIS? So a war against ISIS will eventually lead to a war in Saudi Arabia, most likely Iran against Saudi Arabia over the oil fields and stuff like that. So, there's a lot of things going on there. But getting back to here, I mean, the Canadian economy has been growing ever since the Harper government has taken power pretty much. A little bit of a recession, but nothing to worry about, and our growth has always been like just hugging the line, but it's still growth. Now, the CBC said, and I don't know if this is true or not, that the oil patch in Alberta is only 3% of our economy. Okay, maybe that's true, but what does it affect when you can't pump your own oil? Well, that can affect a lot of things too. So there's a few ways out of this. The number one way is to basically boycott Saudi Arabian products. Just say, okay, no, compete fairly or else whatever. The other is just to nationalize the oil and say, okay, no, we're gonna, we'll operate at a loss if we see it in other benefits such as, more people are taking road trips, more people are buying this, there's more tractor trailers on the road because, that's diesel's cheaper, that type of thing. I mean, and it's true, fuel costs do run an economy big time because, again, like I live in the middle of nowhere and I'm 100 kilometers outside of Ottawa, so what happens to everybody every morning that travels to Ottawa? They either have to carpool or, because there's not a lot of work up in these areas, right? So, most people end up moving to town because they just can't, you can't afford the several $100 bill at the end of the week to, you're working for $80 a day after taxes and you're spending 40 or 50 on fuel. You know what I mean? Like it's too much. Now when I was a kid, say a teenager or a young man, it was 45 cents a liter. I'd fill up my motorcycle, which got 60 miles to the gallon. I could travel from here to town, there and back, sometimes 2.5 times before I'd run out of fuel. So, that'd cost me $5. You know what I mean? Big deal, that type of thing. The good old days. I don't think we'll ever see those good, because again, look, for the speed in which the oil has been dropping down, we're not seeing the prices correlate. You're never probably going to see that 50 cent a liter again. Maybe you will. 50 cents a liter is fine. You could see an economical boom out of that. Which, if they keep everything the way it is and the fuel prices go down, the cost of living will go down. If you can get the cost of living to go down, then you'll have economic prosperity. But if they don't get the cost of living to go down, they have to wrangle these banks, number one. But again, I think we're in 2008, I think we're about to hit our 2008 crash when everybody hits the real crash. And then we're going to go right into a, global, we're already in a global depression. When you look at the growth numbers on every country, it's dismal, Even China, China's just as manipulated as the United States. Now, the thing is if you got rid of all the stock markets and all that stuff, that would be good for humanity. And here's why. Because if you have a product, and let's say my product is these little chips, these little chip clip things, okay? And I make this and I sell it to you, you buy it, you have something tangible, I have your money in my pocket, it's tangible, it's in my hand. And we'll cycle this throughout the economy, goods and services, trading, all over the place. And that's fine, that'll do that. But the second say, okay, well, I'm going to build 100 million of these, but I need financing for that now so I can build it 5 years, 100 million of these in 5 years. Okay, and I'm going to build them at everyday low prices for, say, 3 cents each. But when you give me the money and I start building them, they're actually 5 or 8 or 10 cents each. Okay, now what's happened is I'm operating at a loss. I stop making them. You have all this money that's been spent on what the company was supposed to make but didn't make. Okay, now the company becomes insolvent. Oh, we're going to go out of business, and then they get a bailout. That's kind of how it works. I know it's so oversimplistic, but that's how all the stock market and stuff is kind of working, is the speculation of what you're going to make, not what you actually made. And that's why and that's just one facet of the stock market. That's not the whole thing. But that's a very, very basic kind of hint at some of the thousands and thousands of problems of derivatives and stuff like that. Speculation on money you're going to make. It's like there was a guy opened up a company and said this company opens up at worth $100 billion. They haven't done a thing yet. The front door hasn't even opened yet. How could it be $100 million company? You know what I mean? Like it hasn't done anything. It's because that's what they're going to make, but you don't know that. You see the problem, and then you get all your retirement and everything is basically bet on this, and that's what's happened again, and that's why Goldman Sachs, they're out there talking about the oil prices, and stuff like that they're going to see, they're trying to guess where the bottom is and stuff like that. But you have to understand, everyday low prices, erase your dollar for the cheapest stuff from the lowest bidder for everyday low prices. Eventually, and you're seeing it now, people that work in the Walmarts and stuff like that, they can't afford to shop there. They can't afford to shop where it's, crazy cheap. And they can't afford it because their wages aren't high enough. Now, their goal is to go and strike and get $15 an hour or whatever. But that's not the problem. The problem isn't the $15 an hour or not getting $15 an hour. The problem isn't even minimum wage. The problem is the cost of living is rising much faster than what wages are rising. They're not in sync. And this is where I think when Alberta, and somebody left a message, and it was just one person, so maybe there's more, saying, the oil patch is kind of slowing down, and, But I've always looked at that stuff as break and bust anyway. It's like mining. It was the same as Nortel and Corel in the 90s, and JDS and all that in Ottawa. They were hiring 40, 50,000 people. Like, it was just a mad hiring. And I told all my friends, I said, you're making good money now. Put it, don't blow it senselessly. I said, to me, anything that hires in bulk fires in bulk. It's like mining. Once the mine is done, there's no guaranteed employment. And then people went out. Some of my friends went out, bought houses, and had 2 cars. The wife had a car. All this debt, right? They just racked it all up. And then what happens? And I remember the day I saw it on the CBC, and this was just around when JDS, Nortel, and Corel and all them had like the big, the Black Friday, so to speak. They're like, oh, we're now doing outsourcing because there's so much work. We can outsource to India, and the third world will just benefit, and we'll benefit, and everything benefit. And I'm like, and I told all my friends, you just lost your jobs. You just lost your jobs. They're like, what do you mean? I said, they're outsourcing. Yeah, it's because we have too much work. We can't handle it. I said, you're getting $25 an hour. And then my friend says, yeah. So I said, the guy over there, they're paying $1.70 an hour, if that. You've lost your job, and it's legal. You know what I mean? And then they get it, and then about 6 months later, tens of thousands lost their jobs. And, it's like, I said, so now, but nobody said, okay, well, what was the cause of this? Oh, well, slow down in production. It was this. No, it was outsourcing. These companies are still up and running over there. You know what I mean? And that's why every time somebody calls you about your credit history, it's, hello, sir, how are you doing today? And you'll be like, I'm good. Where are you calling from? I'm in India. Why are you calling me from India? Because it's my job. But my credit's over here. Yes, I know that, but I have a computer, and I am working over here. You are working over there. You shut up and listen now. I will tell you about your credit. Okie dokie. You're like, okay. And that's the way it goes. I want to talk to a person. Sometimes you can, and I have nothing against the people in India. I don't. But sometimes, man, it's like, can you repeat that? I couldn't. The accent is so thick. And it's like, it's just, and it never stops. You got all these telemarketers, and they're all from over there. I don't blame them. I mean, it's the only jobs that they can get. I mean, that type of thing. So, it's kind of a bit of a catch-22. It's like, to save this country, you have to sacrifice that country. So to me, I'm like, well, why don't they just start something like that over there for themselves? And they are. India is. They are trying to get out of the Stone Age. God love them. It's like, wish them luck. The problem is it won't do them any good to get out of the Stone Age if they have no customers. You know what I mean? And if you destroy the most prosperous countries through globalism and things like NAFTA, CAFTA, the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership, and of course you have the North American Union. Look, Boeing, Bombardier used to be huge manufacturing in Montreal. Pretty much all moved down to Mexico. Oh, great! Now we can build Airbus for cheaper. You know what I mean? Like that type of thing. But then they're not going to need to build these things. Why? Because they're not going to pay the people the wages they pay them here. So again, it's another thing. Again, the people that are building these airplanes will never be able to be paid well enough to afford to fly on them. Like this is what these globalists don't get. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know. Like it's again, you rush your dollar to the bottom for the everyday lowest prices, build the crappiest stuff by the cheapest stuff by the lowest bidder. You'll get there, and then at some point, everybody's out of business. So these Fortune 500 companies, which should be doing a mandatory profit sharing, take 1%, even just 1% of these, you get a multi-billion-dollar company that has, say, like 1,500 employees or 5,000 employees. Take 1% of that, divide it amongst them at the end of the year, or beginning of the year, or by quarterly, however, let the company decide that. Give them a profit of it. Not, oh, here's your $500 bonus. No, here's what we made in this. We made $100 million in profit. We're going to take $100 million, take 1% of that, and give it. It doesn't cut into their bottom line. It just spreads the wealth. So that no matter what, these Fortune 500 companies, these 1%ers, can never hang on to the money. They have to keep bringing it back into the economy. And that would just create so much wealth. And the other thing it would probably do is it would cycle the employment rate. And here's why. You got a guy, okay, that's making money hand over fist, okay? He's not being paid the highest wages, but, let's say, okay, he gets paid $25,000 a year is what he makes on his job, before taxes, okay? But then he keeps getting a bonus of $10,000, $50,000, whatever, every year, okay? So he's after 4 or 5 years, he'll be sitting there with his wife, or if he's a single guy or whatever, saying, I want to work for myself. And he'll take some of that money, unless he blows it senselessly, he'll take some of that money and he'll work from home, he'll do this, he'll do that. But at the end of the day, he's given up his other job, he's living a comfortable life, he's now starting his own business, and now that job needs to be filled. The next person comes in, and they get boosted up. Now, if this guy fails, well, he'll wait till the position opens, he's already got the experience, and he can go back to it again. To me, I know nothing ever works that simply, but to me, it makes sense to do a mandatory profit sharing. Now, I know they do profit sharing and stuff like that on the oil patch and bonuses and stuff like that, but I mean, if it's profitable, you can. This is why I don't like the idea of a minimum wage, is you need to get people working first. Now, in the States, all the job growth they have is pretty much low-paying jobs. Now, this is kind of good, but the problem is that, the high-tech jobs, the careers, those are disappearing, And I think this is the problem with government. They can't fix it. They can create work, but, they can make work projects. They can't really fix anything. That has to come from the private sector. Now, the good news about Canada, if the statistics are right, even if they're only, even if they're off, a couple of percent one way or the other. Last I heard, our economy is 84% private sector. That's good. That's really good. So that means, mind you, we're only a population of 33.5 million. Okay, so yeah, we have a lot of government. We have a few million people in government. If you add up municipality, provincial, and federal, we've got a fair. You're talking a couple million people. In government, public works, police, fire department, paved roads, that type of thing. So, talk a couple of million people right there. So, if you can have 84% of that business in private sector, whenever the government takes a hit, not everybody else is going to suffer as much. But if the oil patch is only 3% of our economy, and if we say, let's say we're down to like $8 a barrel of oil in Saudi Arabia, okay, and we can't compete with that, but we could still use our oil domestically, which would still benefit Canada, even if it was more expensive to buy our own oil, we could still pass a law to operate, at a profit, a small profit. You don't want to go into recession and just say, okay, no, we're just not going to buy products from over there. But then your products will be so much more expensive here. They're already it's already expensive here. It's already expensive here. People that come up from the States, they get a complete culture shock when they buy, particularly booze or cigarettes. They're like, wow, or ammunition. If you buy ammunition, whenever I hear about, Americans complain about expensive ammo, I'm like, you don't know half of it. It's like I only paid. I had to pay $9 for 22,000 rounds of 50 cal. That's an outrage. It's like one's like $250,000 here. You know what I mean? It's like. I'm kidding, but you get the idea. It's, we tax consumption here. We have personal tax consumption, municipal tax. There's over, I think, something like 150 taxes in Canada. We tax on top of tax on top of tax on top of tax with service fees. That's how our economy floats itself. Like, I mean, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. So, but even at that, for us, it's not so much. Our taxes are too high. That's one thing. But it's more that we don't. We have. It's the spending. We got to get the spending under control. Our government's too big. And all credit and all due, yes, the Conservative government, and I'm not giving them a reigning endorsement, but I voted for them the last 2 times for a few reasons. And I do understand that they're globalists, they're not conservative, they're socialist, fascist in nature. I know, and I'll explain this because a lot of people don't, they're like, what are you calling a conservative government socialist, fascist? I think when you look at it, okay, number one, they don't really touch the the social, many of the conservatives that are in power right now are socially conservative, meaning they're Christian, they believe in heterosexual marriage, that type of thing. But they don't touch the gay rights issue, they don't touch the abortion issue, they don't touch the death penalty issue. So you're not your classical conservatives that normally get unelected because of those issues. Harper has known how to steer clear of that. He knows they're insolvent issues, you can't win them, and stuff like that. And I'm glad, that they don't put that angle on it. They don't force that angle on it anyway. Now, a fiscal conservative, well, that means they're going to, they are kind of fiscally conservative. They are bringing us back to a balanced budget, but that can get swung out of whack pretty quick. Now, fiscal conservative, where they are fiscally conservative is, yes, they have found duplicate government programs and cut here, cut there, with a surgical scalpel knife, not with an axe. Because one thing the conservatives know is that they have to do everything incrementally. This is the slowest moving government incrementally I've ever seen. Like the liberals, they used to do something, well, we're just going to do this. And they wouldn't think it out, they would just do it, and of course they would get in trouble after when they do something stupid. And they did a lot of stupid things. That's why they're not elected anymore. Now, the thing is that what the conservatives are doing is, they're not thinking of this run, they're thinking of the next run, they're thinking of the next election. How do we win it? Well, if we're going to take away jobs, don't take away 3,000 jobs, take away 30 jobs. Then wait a bit, take another 30 jobs, 40 jobs. Incremental in this department, that department. Cut it down slowly. It's austerity, but really, really slow. And that's what we've been doing. So you don't see it coming. You don't hear the, oh my God, they're going to lay off 10,000 public service workers. And then, of course, you'll have, all the protests out there and the unions and stuff like that, and then you lose the election because the media is controlled by these people, right? So CBC, okay, well, we'll cut a little bit of your budget and they lose 600 people, okay, but they got thousands of people. Okay, so that's big. It's enough they can make it stink, but not enough they can scream bloody murder on, right? Next year, they'll take off a little more. Here's your budget, stick with it. Now, what they're telling the provinces, you need to get your house in order. We've got our house in order, you need to get your house in order. You need to balance your budgets. So you have Kathleen Wynne out there, which, she's completely, demonized Harper at every possible. I mean, she's your typical. She's more of a socialist than a liberal. The lady can't add at all. And of course, the Ontario debt is just completely out of whack. It's like Parliament of Voix was here. I mean, she's pretty much destroyed Quebec's economy. She's and in such a short amount of time. I mean, it only took a year and a half to take a province that was barely struggling along to completely stomp their face into the ground. Thank you very much. You know what I mean? Destroyed all the industry. Just a nightmare. But life goes on. Whatever. But the thing with the Alberta is that the Harper government. Here's where Harper spends his time. He spends it up north because of the Arctic. That's where the resources. And I'm kind of a mixed emotion on raping the Arctic. It's such a fragile area. I just don't. It's not that the safety practices aren't good and stuff like that. It's, the eco-terrorist that comes and blows up the pipeline and then complains about the oil spill, that, goes throughout BC type of thing. And you've had that so many times. To me, eco-terrorists should be strung up and shot. Just string them up and shoot them. It's like, you're defeating your own purpose, because you're destroying the environment, That said, you have to break a few eggs to make an omelet. The oil sands, I'm kind of neutral on. There is issues, with the water, and stuff like that. So yeah, I do get there are legitimate things, but I also understand it is a big part of our economic growth. 3% doesn't sound like much, but it is pretty big. It's probably one of the bigger sectors. You know what I mean? It's just that we have a lot of different sectors here in Canada. So our economy, in comparison to just about anybody else's economy, our debt to GDP ratio is not the lowest, but it's definitely not the highest. I put it into perspective. Well, last time I heard, and this was probably last year, I don't know what it'd be now, but the average Canadian, man, woman, and child, owes about $75,000 in taxes to the government. That's on average, okay? Now, that said, if you go to the United States right now with the $18 trillion deficit and growing, and it's going to spike to probably about $25 trillion by the end of this year when they start paying the bills. owes $4 billion per man, woman, and child. Yeah. And this is per capita. I mean, this is man, woman, and child. So, I mean, when you work it out, their debt is so, well, no country has that. You even had people in Greece and Italy saying, you know, you think our economy's bad. Just wait till the American economy tanks. Oh, man. It takes the world with it. It's a mountain climber effect. One falls, we all fall. Well, same here in Canada. If Alberta falls, well, then that puts the strain on Manitoba and Saskatchewan for transfer payments, you know. And can you imagine Saskatchewan have to send transfer payments to Alberta? Like that just blows my mind, you know. So what happens to Saskatchewan and Alberta? Well, they'll eventually end up in a recession too. So then, at some point, the unavoidable has to happen. We have to shrink government. To me, I think there should only be two levels of government: federal and municipal. That's it. Let the communities run themselves the best they can. You can make the federal a little bit bigger to, you know, take up some of the lag of the provincial governments, but just get rid of the provincial governments. They're a waste of money, and more importantly, they really, really hurt business. You know, but number one, all governments should be shrunk down big time. And I don't think you're going to see a big shrink. In fact, when I say the conservatives are socialist, fascist, well, one of the big things is that they don't really cut all the social programs. They cut some, but very, very few. Very, very few. In fact, if anything, they make the government bigger, so they're more socialist, you know, in that sense. They're fascist in the sense that basically they give corporate welfare out instead of citizenry welfare. That's where they're fascist, is that they will basically take it, which does, they are doing a trickle down in economics in a fairly sustainable way that does kind of work. The auto industry, I don't think, should be bailed out really in Canada. You know, because that's the whole problem. You can't pay people $30-$60 an hour on benefits and bonuses and all that if the profits aren't there. You know, you have to let, you know, look, we used to have Canadian Air, we have Air Canada, we used to have Canadian Air, I don't think they're around anymore. There was like 3 or 4, we had de Havilland Canada, we had Avro Canada, we had, you know, a whole bunch of them. All those went out because they were, you know, the bad management mostly, but a lot of it was because they couldn't restructure to say, okay, well, you know, maybe the most we could pay somebody to do this type of work is this much. And they couldn't restructure that. They got too unionized. And once you get unionized, you're pretty much, you know, the only people that can stay in a union that won't pretty much backfire on them is government, because it's almost impossible to lay off anybody in the government. But that's a problem too, because government should be contract-based. We need you for this. We don't need you for that. At all levels, you know, at all levels, you know, and that's the thing. So we need to shrink our government to get, you know, balanced budget, but to actually start to get tax breaks. So there's one thing of balancing the budget, and then there's the next thing of tax breaks. Now that said, the quality of life has surpassed Americans. We were living a better quality of life up here than they are in the States, because in the States, well, they got 92 million to 96 million people out of work. I mean, it's a third of their population. They don't have a 5.6% unemployment rate. You know, that lightning economic recovery is, no. What they do in the States is they add up foreign manufacturing as new jobs, which, you know, and they also add in, they don't add in the discouraged workers, people who are no longer eligible for food stamps or welfare or whatever. They just say, oh, they're just lazy and they don't want to work. We do here in Canada. We do add in discouraged workers, so that's, you know, a little more honest. It doesn't mean we're out of the water, and again, we're too globally tied to everybody else. But because we are, like, demographically a small country, like, again, you know, we're the second largest, you know, country landmass on the planet, right after Russia, and then after us, I think it's the United States, and then Australia or India or China, one of those ones. But anyway, we only have like 33.5 million people here, like, you know. And when you don't realize how big Canada is until you fly over it, it's like it takes like 6 hours just to get halfway across the country. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, you know, from Ottawa to yeah, probably about 6 hours get you to Vancouver, maybe. You know, which is more than halfway across country. But you know, you get an idea. You're going, you know, and that's from Ottawa. Now, from say Newfoundland to there, yeah, you're looking at probably about 6-8 hours. Or 8-9 hours just to get across the country, you know what I mean? So to fly across, so that gives you an idea. It takes that long to fly across the ocean. You know, it give you an idea. It's almost the same distance, the Atlantic Ocean. So, So when you're looking at it like that, it's like, okay, it's a big country. We do have a lot of resources, not as much manufacturing. We're starting to get into manufacturing. And our high-tech sector is extremely high-tech, but it's very low numbers. Most of that is government stuff. Right now, CANSAC just had a weapons trade show in Ottawa. I don't think it was open to the public. Usually those things aren't. And they were showing all the goodies and technology that they had and stuff like that. And of course there was, the usual guys like Lockheed Martin and all that there. And Dassault Rafale was, they were pushing that there. And the Eurofighter Typhoon and stuff like that. They didn't have the aircrafts there, but the boosts were there and stuff like that. But I was looking at some of the technology, like our drone technology is good. We have underwater drone technology. When it comes to mining and stuff like that, Canada is, we make pipe fittings that are, sent around the world for, it's like, well, we want to build a refinery. This is what drives me nuts. Is rather than build the oil pipeline, which now is being put into question because of the cheap oil, they shouldn't bother with the oil pipeline at all. It's a mess. They should build refineries here, but because of the laws Trudeau put in, saying that we weren't going to, because of OPEC, we weren't going to be putting in. OPEC, I think, came along a little later, but some of the laws were basically we weren't going to build refineries here so that we'd send our oil down to the States so they could refine it and then send it back up here. It's lunacy. You know what I mean? We can get the oil here, we should refine it here and sell it here. It will drive the cost down if you keep everything reasonable. But if, again, I'd rather have everybody working at 10 or 15 bucks an hour than pay only a handful of people at 60 bucks an hour and not make any money. Now, the employee themselves, 60 bucks an hour, and the other people's talked about it as well, say like for minivan, whatever. One guy was saying, look, he says, we make a minivan. He says, the labor on a minivan is about 800 bucks. He says, but he says, they're saying that, we're too expensive or whatever. And it is one of those things that, okay, yeah, labor cost is kind of subjective because it's, the bottom line is basically the profit. Yeah, you can always find a third world worker to make it cheaper, but it doesn't matter how cheap the vehicle is if it's how well does it sell is the thing. So to me, I'm more of a person that believes that pay people well, don't pay them, don't have a union, no union. Unions will put you out of work or make it impossible to hire new people. I don't like the idea of not being able to fire people, and I don't like the idea of not being able to hire people because you have to pay them so much. This is the problem they have with Obamacare down in the States, is that people aren't hiring, getting more than 25 hours a week because of the Obamacare. You get rid of Obamacare. The problem is right now they don't have a medical system to replace it with. Obamacare is destroyed. Obamacare is a genocide program. It helps very few. For the amount of people it disenfranchises, the amount of people it helps very few, right? So with that said, here in Canada, the other thing you have to keep in mind too is that our employment rate is supposed to be around the 6.6% or something like that, 6.9%, which is pretty high considering. But the thing is that the people that I know that work, you take me, I live in the middle of nowhere. I have no vehicle. And I make ends meet. Like people learn how to survive, I just don't make good money. That's, I don't make money. I can't tell you from week to week what I'm going to make. I can't even tell you month to month what I'm going to make. That type of thing, because I don't know, and a lot of people like that. And it's that kind of uncertainty that some people, it just keeps them up at night. To me, I'm like, money comes and goes, Sometimes I'm broke, sometimes I got money, You live it up when you can, live like a rat when you can't, It's just the way I do. But I don't have expenses to worry about like other people. I don't have a family to worry about like other people, that type of thing. So, but I still gotta eat, right? So I gotta do whatever I gotta do. But on the other hand, too, there's like a lot of people I know that, they work like, technically you could say I work like 3 jobs, right? I know a lot of people up here, they don't really work one specific thing. It's like you ask them what they do for a living, everything. It's just kind of the way it is around here. Other people, they've been working at the same job for a while, and they have to have that constant paycheck every 2 weeks, or else, they just can't, they can't live, you know what I mean? So it's different things for everybody. My brother, I'll use my brother. Summertime, he's a zip line operator. He doesn't make good money at that, but he enjoys it and stuff like that. Right now, he's working on a ski hill, so which is cool because I want to go skiing pretty soon. I'm gonna hitch a ride with him to work one day, and so if I end up like in a body cast, because I haven't been skiing in about 7 years, and like you get on your skis and you're like, yeah, okay, time to taste life with death. Down the hill I go, hot dog, and like 5 feet down the hill, you're like, snowball, turned, ski flying, poles over there. Actually, I'm not a bad skier. It's just, but your leg muscles, they forget. I mean, you remember how to ski, but your legs forget. So go easy on it. But anyway, but it's an economy. But even at that, like, I mean, he's just starting his work now because people aren't spending like they were spending. The house debt, house to GDP, house debt, household debt is at an all-time high in Canada. People are living off of credit cards, but they're not buying, the latest and greatest. They're buying, necessities. Which, if you want to have a good economy, this is why I say a consumer-based economy is an insane idea. Where I'd like to see is a saving-based economy where people can save. One thing the Conservatives did do is they had, and I don't know if they don't do it every year, but they got the banks to basically, or a bank to basically have a tax-free savings account or savings plan. You couldn't touch this thing. It was meant for your retirement, and they should do that. Retirement savings should be non-taxable. Period. Why? Because most people are not going to be able to scrounge enough to live off of anyway. And the whole, thing of people who make, millions of dollars a year, being able to get a government-funded pension, I think is a little bit, say, look, if you make this much, you're not eligible for government pension. Pay out of your own pocket, put it away. We won't touch your pension, but most of these people, they can afford to pay their own pensions. Because again, why should they be getting a government pension when they, make millions of dollars all the time? Like anything, you should have a pension plan. The pension thing is one of our biggest problems that we have for debt, next to healthcare. Healthcare is our biggest number one cost in Canada, which is not a bad thing when you think about it. When you look at the United States, the biggest thing they pay is the military. Now, will that change in Canada? No, we do need a bigger military in Canada, for Canada, not over there somewhere. We don't need to be in the Ukraine. We don't need to be, I don't mind it when they fly over, okay, well, this place just got a disaster, okay, go over, help them, get them set up, and then come back. Don't stay there for year after year after year, that type of thing. Help them because teach the people how to help themselves. That's all you can do. So, disaster relief, I'm not opposed to Canadian soldiers be used for disaster relief because that helps humanity. But when it's, okay, well, we're going to set up a proxy army over there and we're going to support them like we are in the Ukraine, I'm not for that because that leads to our guys getting killed for no reason. It's not up to governments to pick good guys and bad guys. It's up to the people. If you want to go to war, you let the people vote on that. Next to that, the Canadian economy is kind of, again, Christmas time, you're not even hearing about the record-breaking Christmas numbers. There is none. They're not even talking about it right now. It's like they're just trying to, yeah, we're not going to talk about it at all. That's how this one will. Why? Because people are broke. People are broke. So to turn around the economies, I think the only way the economy really turns around is, well, we have to become more private sector, number one. We have to get shrink the government, get those budgets down. The good news is we're almost at a balanced budget. We're like $3 billion off a balanced budget. So you might as well say it's balanced for all intents and purposes. That's because, again, the Conservatives are balancing the budget. Yeah, they're doing some cuts, and you're going to always have your Liberals, well, they cut this again. They're not cutting and slashing with an axe. They're taking it with a scalpel. Fair is fair. Thing is they're not dropping the taxes. That's where the Conservative people are mad, is that they're not dropping the taxes. And the thing is that they're giving the tax breaks to the wrong people. They're giving it to the big corporations. It's the mom and pop shops that you need to be giving the tax breaks to because they're way more stable than any big corporation. All big corporations, look, the Koch brothers, the top 85 most richest people in the world are the Koch brothers, okay? But yet they got a bailout in 2008. How is that possible? That's why they're the most rich, because people keep giving them the money when they didn't earn it. In my world, there's no such thing as too big to fail. Government can oversee some stuff, but when it gets to a point, for example, when, let's say you have a government product, we'll use the rail line, for example. Okay, it's going to cost what it's going to cost to keep a rail system going. Okay, it's not cheap. So you can't compromise on safety and stuff like that, and you might be outcompeted. You might have to compete with foreign, trains coming into the country, dropping stuff off, and you can't compete with them. Okay, well, fine. How about we have some tariffs and taxes on them so that we can compete evenly? So yeah, they want to pay those people, pennies on the dollar, so to speak. Well, we're going to put tariffs on the company unless they up the wages for those people. That type of thing. Same thing like going back to the call centers. If the people over there aren't making what the people over here are, we shouldn't use the call center. But rather than put that call center out of work, because I hate to see people out of work no matter where they are, put a tariff on them, say, we can either put a tariff on you or you can up the wages so that it's equal to us. And that helps them out over there too. And again, the more money you put in people's pocket, the more money you make, the more money you spend. Period. But a consumer-based economy doesn't really work. I get the idea on it, but it doesn't work. You need a sustainable economy. And that usually comes from high quality, not everyday low prices from And you also, too, if you move away from just a consumer-based economy, you usually end up with an economy based on technology and really smart. Now, Hitler was scared of technology to a point. He liked to be advanced, but he didn't want too much technology to put people out of work. We're kind of facing in what he was talking about back then, that because everything is so automated, there's nobody to work. So we need to restructure how if we're going to automate everything, that nobody does lifts a finger to do anything. Well, then we have to look at what can we get people to do so that they can flourish. Unfortunately, with the globalist mentality, it's they have this useless eater mentality that we'll just starve people out. We'll have medical practices that make people die waiting for health care. It's a genocide program. And you have to factor that in because these people, they don't think on a human basis. You're a product. You're cattle. They think like that. They really do. They don't think of prosperity. They don't think of quality of life. Hence why you have mass immigration everywhere and stuff like this. And I got to keep harping on that. Now, here in Canada, we've changed our mass immigration. That's the only problem I have with our immigration system here in Canada is that we're just bringing in too many people, 250,000, and going to be upping it to close to 300,000 people per year, which is too much. Now, the good news is 61% of our roughly economic immigrants, but they're not high tech. And then, of course, with the the outrage over the the visa program that they have for work, the foreign workers program they have here in Canada. At first, they were paying people 15% less. So, of course, all the big companies, Royal Bank was going to, I'm pretty sure it was Royal Bank was going to lay off 5,000 people to bring in a whole bunch of foreign workers for 15% less. So the government said, "Oh, okay, well, we can't do that." Again, because the next thing they do is they cut it again and cut it again. So then they said, "Okay, well, they got to pay people equal." Then they catch all these this restaurant owner out in BC taking advantage of the foreign workers program. And again, we shouldn't be bringing people in to work at McDonald's. That type of thing. So then they said, "Okay, well, you got to pay them 15% more." But then the guy extorts it by saying, "Okay, well, I'll bring you in to work here, and I'll basically, force all the, indigenous Canadian people out, and that's what this guy's done. But you live in my buildings, and you're going to pay me rent. So whatever he pays them, he gets back through the rent, right? So it's an extortion. So people see this and they're like, "Oh, okay." So now they're talking about $1,000 head tax, which I agree with. I'd say if you're bringing in a foreign worker and you need to bring in that foreign worker, it should be at least $2,600. Just say, okay, we want to bring them in, we're going to make you pay. So then you're only going to get high-tech jobs, bringing people in for high-tech jobs. Why? Because, $2,600, yeah, it's worth it. I'm losing money. Get the guy over here. You know what I mean? Here you go. Just, move the paperwork. Come on, I got to get this guy working. Our companies, but for fast food workers, no. And that's the problem. Most of our economy is fast food and retail. Right now we need to switch away from that to get higher tech. But we also need to, rather than try to grow the population to insanity, and I'm not anti-populist, I'm more of a sustainable. Yes, you can have a declining population, okay, and the argument you get with the mass immigration is that, the reason why we have to do it is because if we don't, there's going to be a labor shortage. Well, no, no. If you have less people, it's okay. Well, let's say somebody was a fast food or a janitor or a road worker or a garbage man or whatever, or a doctor, okay. Other people will fill that in. But when these people pass away, okay, when you have an aging population, they pass away. You no longer need all the services for those people. And not only that, you no longer need to be, a fast food worker. Oh, shortage. Well, again, every time somebody kicks the bucket, you have less people in the economy, you know what I mean? So you don't necessarily have to replace their job. The position could be filled, here, there, everywhere, at some time. People will go from a low-paying job to a higher-paying job. Again, when you move people along, that's what happens. So this idea that, oh no, we have to flood people in. Well, then all you do is you just take up the positions where nobody can ever move up because there's just not enough jobs to go around. So I'd rather be at a labor shortage than not enough people working. So that's the way I look at it. And again, the labor shortage, if it's a service-based economy, again, we shouldn't be importing people to work at McDonald's or stuff like that. No, bring them in. The school, stuff like that. Sure, we do have a lot of students that come in and stuff like that, and that's fine. But the thing is we need to up the quality of jobs. And I think that's going to happen in the private sector, not the. We need like a Canadian version of SpaceX. We need like a Canadian version. Just more high tech stuff. We need our own Canadian internet, that type of thing. And countries are talking about stuff like, rather than just use the technology that's available, let's develop our own. And we do to a point, but again, it's too small. We need to make it bigger. But that'll only happen at natural growth through the private sector economy. So anyway, I just thought I'd bring that up. So watch for things. Again, the low fuel prices, I think, help out in the short run. But I think in the long run, we're going to end up paying the $18 a gallon, like they're saying. Some people say, because, you're losing out in one area when you can't produce things, then once the oil has to come across the ocean again from Saudi Arabia, and all the people in the oil patch are laid off, well, when the people in the oil patch are laid off, there's a lot of businesses in Alberta that benefit off of that. It's, because everybody's a big spender, but when people are no longer a big spender, so it does have trickle effect. So you might get more spending in the economy for the average person who no longer has to pay a higher fuel price, but because you lay off so many people in the oil patch, the people in that area stop, that benefited from that, they also go out of work, and you create deficits in different areas. So things to watch out for. I guess I'll leave it at that. So anyway, if you like this kind of content, there's a link down below to make donations. Thank you very much to everybody who has. Rate, subscribe, share, comment, like, and if you have any links related to the topic, please post them down below, or if you're working in the oil patch, let us know how things are going. And what you're being told, and and the other thing too, just one last thing. If the oil prices drop, be interesting to know how many foreign workers they pull in to offset the cost, because I know they do sneaky things like that. So anyway, be true to yourself, be true to others, and always do the right thing. Have a great day, eh? G'day, hi, and welcome. You, what's up, buddy? You want to do this video? Here, do the video. Say, hi, I'm Kazoo. I'm going to talk to you about the low oil prices. But first, check out my butt. Anyway. Okay, so oil prices in Alberta oil prices in the country, I guess, is affecting Alberta's production. It's affecting the U.S. Shale. The Saudis have come out and said, and they said it at one point, they'll take the oil as low as they want. And I guess they're saying the equivalent of the Saudi Arabian Warren Buffett, I guess you would say, is out there saying $100 barrel oil. Never going to happen again. Said it was artificial and it didn't need to be that way. Now, Obama has been out there saying, yeah, we're with the Saudis and we've manipulated the oil. They're pumping out oil left, right, and center. No stop in sight. And they also came out and said, well, if you think we're doing this to destabilize Russia, oh, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing this to destabilize Iran either. No, not at all. It just happened that way. Yeah, and there's a lot of agendas on this. Now, one of the agenda, it is a bit of an economic Kickstarter to a point, but, if the ship is sinking on one end and you run to the other end of the ship, eventually, yeah, you might be buying a little time. I don't think you're going to save anything. Now, the shale industry, they have to cut back on, and there's layoffs there in the States and stuff like that. In the oil patch in Alberta, it's kind of, I don't know how many layoffs there is, but again, if oil goes below, I think they said 30 a barrel on the CBC, they just can't recoup that. So what happens when oil goes below 30 a barrel? Well, that means all the transfer payments that are going to, they're talking about a recession in Alberta. Think about it. That's our strongest economy in the country is Alberta. Okay? Now, they're talking about Alberta going into recession. And it's going into recession before any of the other provinces. But think about this. Alberta, yeah, under Alison Redford, it started to rack up some debt because of her, she was a left-wingy, what were these so-called progressive conservatives? They're really illiberal. They're really liberals. They're not conservative. Fiscal. You can have social programs and be fiscally responsible, but you have to be fiscally responsible first to be considered a conservative. She didn't do that. Like this idea of borrowing money from the government to rack up debt. Eventually, you end up like Greece or Spain. And Quebec and Ontario is kind of like the Greece and Spain of Canada. Economically speaking, Ontario. Ontario is there's just too much government there. That's the problem. You got a dog. Okay. And the bottom line is that if Alberta goes into recession, and transfer payments, because the way the transfer payments work in Canada is the have-not provinces get from the have provinces. But if they go into recession, then they're going to be starting to become a have-not province. Therefore, it's going to get very tough in this country for some people. Particularly retirement, healthcare. Those are the things that always get cut first for some reason, not the big government pensions and, just the wasteful spending or the foreign aid. Again, before we cut our, transfer of wealth here, let's cut the foreign aid spending. We're way too involved in global affairs. We're way too involved in that. We don't need to know what's going on over there so much. But, that's the only time you hear about our prime minister and stuff like that is when there's something to do with over there. But, it's like, no, focus on here. And the problem is all these politicians want to run the UN someday. That's the biggest problem right there. Which, considering the global governance thing, it makes understandable sense that, they want to be running the world, so to speak. So with that going, the oil dropping down the way it is, there's also been speculation when it bounces back that, because of everything will be in such recession, like the consumer's winning out right now for now. But, once they have to stop, once you lay off everybody and they go home, nobody's pumping oil in Canada. Nobody will be pumping oil in the United States. They will not be energy independent. Therefore, Saudi Arabia, even if it has $10 a barrel oil, which some said they might take it, they'll take it down to whatever they want. They could take it down to $1 a barrel if they want. They don't care, because this isn't done. Again, they're pumping all this oil when it's not needed, So, to me, the only thing I suggest is that they're getting ready for war. So they're pumping all the oil you need now. So during the war, because refineries are going to be hit. But what war are we talking about? Are we talking about World War III or just the war against ISIS? So a war against ISIS will eventually lead to a war in Saudi Arabia, most likely Iran against Saudi Arabia over the oil fields and stuff like that. So, there's a lot of things going on there. But getting back to here, the Canadian economy has been growing ever since the Harper government has taken power pretty much. A little bit of a recession, but nothing to worry about, And our growth has always been like just hugging the line, but it's still growth. Now, the CBC said, and I don't know if this is true or not, that the oil patch in Alberta is only 3% of our economy. Okay, maybe that's true, but what does it affect when you can't pump your own oil? Well, that can affect a lot of things too. So there's a few ways out of this. The number one way is to basically boycott Saudi Arabian products. Just say, okay, no. Compete fairly or else whatever. Yeah, it's just to nationalize the oil and say, okay, no, we're going to, we'll operate at a loss if we see it in other benefits such as, more people are taking road trips, more people are buying this, there's more tractor trailers on the road because, that's diesel's cheaper, that type of thing. And it's true, fuel costs do run an economy big time because, again, like I live in the middle of nowhere and I'm 100 kilometers outside of Ottawa, so what happens to everybody every morning that travels to Ottawa? They either have to carpool or, because there's not a lot of work up in these areas, right? So, most people end up moving to town because they just can't. You can't afford the several $100 bill at the end of the week. You're working for $80 a day after taxes, and you're spending 40 or 50 on fuel. You know what I mean? Like it's too much. Now when I was a kid, say teenager or a young man,